Yeah, it started.
Okay,
Sorry for that.
that's okay. Let me just confirm. So, okay, I see. And, okay, can everyone hear me okay? Let me know in the IRC if you guys can hear me okay. Okay, okay. Uh, so, and so as you guys might be able to see, I don't know if you can see me or the slides, but if you can see me, I'm not in New Hampshire. I had to cancel my travel plans because of flu-like symptoms, but then they went away as soon as I canceled the plans. So, but yeah, I'm still here in Arizona. But we said we'd do it remote, so here we are remotely, and it's we're very privileged to have Sandy Ordonez and Lindsay Beck joining us from Team Community, and they're going to tell us more about the Internet Freedom Community. So usually, if you get a degree in CS, then people give you basically three options. So you can go into government, work for like Sandia National Labs, or go work for the FBI or whatever. Uh, you can go into industry. So in cybersecurity, you might work for a company like FireEye and do analysis or something like that. Or you can go into academia, like you can refuse to leave school, and then after you spend too many years there, they'll eventually kick you out and make you be a professor. And those are the three options people usually talk about. But hopefully today I'll give you guys an idea about a different option, which is a community of people that's working on a very important problem. And then the internet freedom community, to me, it's a lot more tight knit than any kind of community I've ever been part of. So like my wife was in the military, and in the military, like if you might PCS, which means you move. So you might move to a new base, and then you need help moving in. You've only met the people you're working with for a week, but they're there to help you move and stuff. And then if you have, some kind of problem comes up in life, like they'll help you with it. So I know people in the internet freedom community, they can't get back to their country, uh, or worse things happen, they get arrested, and you can imagine worse things that might happen to somebody. And there's a real community of people there, not just like a formal resource like ASU has. If you're a faculty, you can go to faculty counseling services or whatever, but I mean, there's a real community of people that have been through this kind of stuff, and they have your back and everything. And it's a very diverse community. You'll meet people from academia, activists, journalists, people that work on LGBTQ issues, people, women's rights issues, all kinds of different stuff, and people that come from all walks of life, and working on all different things. But then they're all focused on this mission, and there's a lot of camaraderie and everything. And so it's kind of the community that I wish I had in academia, but I don't. And a lot of that is because of Sandy Ordonez's leadership. Uh, so she has been, for 20 years helping to build this community. And she's a graduate of American University with a double degree in international relations and public relations. And she was the first director of communications for the Wikimedia Foundation, which means that she was one of the first Latinas to occupy a leadership position in the open source community. And she created Team Community as a way to continue this community building. And one of the things they're most known for, there's an annual in-person event, formerly known as the Internet Freedom Foundation, Internet Freedom Festival. Does it have a new name now?
Not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
so it will have a new name, but it's the Internet Freedom Festival. And before COVID, the community would meet every year in Valencia, Spain, and it's a great place to meet people and make connections. I think what I went to was technically an OTF summit, not an IFF, but it was in the exact same place with the exact same people almost. But
Yep.
my students have been to a lot of the Internet Freedom Festivals, and then you make connections like you would never in academia. I mean, you go to academic conferences, you're not going to meet an activist from Colombia that runs like a rogue radio station or something. That's the kind of people you can meet if you go to a thing like IFF. And so it's a really, it's just been really rewarding for my career to going to these kinds of things. So I'm indebted to Sandy for organizing all of that kind of stuff and for creating Team Community and the leadership that she's shown in that. And Lindsay has over 15 years of experience working at the intersection of technology, security, and human rights across a variety of nonprofit organizations. She has worked extensively with U.S. and local activism networks to implement digital security strategies into their program activities to ensure their core work remains resilient against the changing threat landscape. She received her master's degree focusing on technology and international affairs from the Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington University. And so both Lindsay and Sandy were working for OTF when I met them. Uh, but Lindsay is the only one I've been to karaoke with. So you got to fix that, Sandy, because you're not part of my circle of trust until you've been to karaoke with me. So, and I know there is a good karaoke place in Austin. I don't know if I'm still welcome there or not. I don't know how long their memory is, but we should try to rectify that in Austin maybe. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Hey everyone, really nice to meet you. I will be monitoring the IRC after I go because I'm going to talk a little bit about the community before I hand it off to Lindsay. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. My partner is also in academia and also wishes that there was a lot more solidarity and just peer-to-peer support. And I think that I'm going to start off actually particularly with that topic because when many of us, Lindsay, I met both Lindsay and Jed during the very, very early days of the digital rights space, and I'm sure that there will be others that will say, no, the digital rights space even dates back to like the 2600 club with the phone folks and everything like that. But for me, the digital rights space really started when folks started to build tools that were directed towards folks in places that were being surveilled and censored because of either who they were or the work that they were doing. For example, if they were journalists or because they were trying to push their society to be better. And Jed, I remember very, very specifically, I met because he had just done research on Weibo in China. China is one of the giants in the surveillance space, right? Or in this field, because a lot of their quote unquote best practices for bad things really influence the rest of the world, even as far as Cuba. So I was really, really excited because there was really little research being done in, things like Weibo in China. And Lindsay was one of the first women that I actually met that was part of this small core group. And what happened was that a lot of us got together and said, this can't be, right? We have to grow this community. We have to widen the tent. We have to bring in more folks from the most vulnerable communities that are facing the biggest risks, related to digital rights and internet freedom. And we really had to make it more equitable. And that's really how this festival, the Internet Freedom Festival, was born. Even though it had many iterations and many different names, we used it as a tool to grow that community. Right now, we're a little bit older, and now we are offering different services and resources that are still directed towards the same thing, making the digital rights community healthier, more equitable, and things like that. So what's the problem right now? Well, the problem is that authoritarianism around the world is growing, right? Only 15% of the world is living in what is considered, quote unquote, an open society. But making this even worse is that whereas maybe even 10 years ago, a lot of these authoritarian entities, right, didn't understand the power of the internet for evil. Now they do. And not only do they do, but they are sharing tactics with each other. They're sharing more resources with each other. So that means that the battle that we're facing in digital rights has gotten a lot more complex, a lot more complicated. And we're seeing many different technical issues, not just technical issues, but particularly for this class, we'll talk about, technical issues that are emerging that really require the passion and skill of folks that are ready to kind of take on that fight, right? And you guys are technologists, you know this better than me. That is everything from the use of facial recognition technology to, disinformation, and then obviously like human issues, because digital rights sits at the intersection of human rights, technology, and social justice. Things like online harassment, right, as a tool to censor, right? While this is happening, the pandemic has affected everyone, right? But within the digital rights community, it has really impacted the community because we were still in that growing phase, and many folks were still at capacity even before the pandemic hit. So now what we're seeing is a lot of folks in our space that were holding the fort, so to speak, for a very long time, kind of burning out. And really what that means is that the need for new talent, the need for new perspectives, the need for good skills, particularly technical skills, is really, really in demand if we have any hope to make an impact in this ongoing, really, battle for rights that encompasses everything from freedom of expression to right to privacy to even, equity in tech. And lastly, and I kind of alluded to this, within this fight for digital rights, unfortunately, it's really the folks that are the most marginalized already, the most vulnerable, that experience the brunt of the impact of not having digital rights, or the attack against folks on their digital rights. So, as Jed also mentioned, our community is very, very diverse. It might be one of the most diverse communities you have ever seen, ever. Truly an internet loving community. We are in all corners of the world, and we range from different movements, and that can be anything from LGBTQ advocates to Dalit women in India to sex workers, to freedom of expression folks, to environmentalists, right? And that's because when you are doing activism, what happens a lot of times, people don't want you to push forward the issues that you're doing. And so you're either directly attacked, that could be physical or digital, you're surveilled, you're censored. But so we really have a sample of different movements. But the cool thing, as Jed said, as someone that considers myself an open source advocate, I love that it's super geeky. So even the folks that are coming from the movements are folks that by nature are interested in this technical problem and figuring out these like technical issues that their people are experiencing, again, very much related to their safety and security. But also the discipline also is very diverse, and that can include everything from journalists to digital security experts like Lindsay here, who is one of the best digital security folks I've ever come across, to diverse type of technologists that Lindsay will go into a little bit more, academics, NGOs, community organizer, policy advocates. Why policy advocates? Well, because in a lot of countries, they're now using policy laws to criminalize the use of encryption, to criminalize the use of VPNs. If you are not following what's happening right now in India with VPNs, it is mind-blowing. And so, we need folks that understand tech to also push or fight against bad laws that are being pushed across the globe in different places. I've already mentioned this before. The profiles of our community are very, very diverse. Some of the issues, so when we first started, a lot of it was security, privacy, and anti-circumvention, right? So anti-censorship and surveillance. But now the issues that our community is working on has really exploded, right? And it will continue to explode. So these are some of the samples. Disinformation is a really big one now, online harassment, whistleblowing, right? And whistleblowing platforms, internet governance, right? How the actual internet is like, the backbones of it, how it's designed and structured. Things like, facial recognition technology, like I already mentioned, and the list goes on, and goes on, right? And as we become much more sophisticated as a society, and more people come online, I guarantee you that this list is just going to be nonstop, which again also points to the fact that we need skill, we need talent, we need people that are passionate about social justice and human rights and want to use their technological know-how to really work on these issues. I'm going to hand it off to Lindsay, but I already posted in the channel. Really encourage you to look at the job board that has a sample. By no means is it a good representation of all the jobs available in this space, but it does give you a nice cross of the different profiles. Lindsay, just say next. I'm going to mute myself and take it away.
Sure, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, and really appreciate everyone's time today and just going through these. So, just to talk a little bit about, what does a career in the digital rights space look like? Jed, Sandy, myself have been working in this arena for some time. And, as Sandy said, this is, much in the same way that like the internet is a network of networks. Our space is a community of communities, and as the space has grown, as more of the issues that that the digital rights space is working on become more complex, there is a higher demand for people with particular skill sets, particular sets of knowledge to really work towards advancing freedom of expression online, access to information, and other critical issues that overlap with technology as well. So, with this, with that being said, certainly, while folks can come from different backgrounds and education, certainly technologists, folks with a technical, a formal technical education and background, have more access to those opportunities because of that, that more specific experience. And what those opportunities can look like, can be things like more hands-on technology development, being more kind of an advisor or technology translator, let's say, for different audiences, continuing to pursue research in academia, or kind of a hybrid of research that feeds into kind of more direct technology outputs, like at a think tank or other institutions, and really, really any place else. A lot of organizations that work on more specific rights-oriented issues often look for technologists or those with technical know-how to advise on particular projects or help execute particular projects as well. And so I will say, obviously, compared to the government or compared to to industry, nonprofits, media, other social good organizations do have smaller budgets, but many of these groups do offer benefits or opportunities that really are unique compared to more resourced counterparts. Things like flexible work hours and locations. Like, even for example, at Team Community, we very recently have enacted a policy of a 4-day work week and have seen tremendous success with that on our staff, and seeing that a lot of other organizations, because of the intense nature at times of the issues that are being worked on, making sure that there is adequate work-life balance as well for team members, or the freedom and flexibility to also pursue other interests as well during their employment. As well, conference attendance, public speaking opportunities are very, very common. The Internet Freedom Festival being, a space where a lot of emerging experts and practitioners come and, have a diverse and quite sizable audience to talk through particular projects or pilots, get more specific feedback, and certainly, many more that, are available in the community as well. Also, international travel, a lot of, because it's an international community, a lot of events happen internationally. So if there's a place you've been wanting to visit or go to, often, more often than not, there is an internet freedom, digital rights community in that location. Next slide, please. So next we'll just go through some examples of different job descriptions or job types that you may come across that could be of interest for you, and then I'll kind of talk through other places where those job opportunities have emerged. So the first is a staff technologist, and so this is really someone that is more of a technical generalist. They are able to have sufficient knowledge of a few different arenas in the technical space, and with that, oftentimes their responsibilities generally center around being able to be available to interpret and describe a particular component of technology, often working alongside lawyers, policy advocates, and others to essentially be able to state, there is this particular technology, here's how it functions, here's how this may impact a particular constituency or group, and then therefore policy team, team of lawyers, what are the recommendations from a technical perspective that the advocacy organization or the advocacy group would want to make sure are reformed, have stronger oversight of, are protected and maintained for particular reasons, etc. And so beyond the kind of technical knowledge piece related to this, skills related to this type of career path are being able to explain what can at times be very complex technical issues to non-technical audiences, and that can be not just colleagues and lawyers, but policymakers that are maybe not as fluent in technology issues as others, or that they just have very limited time, and so need to be able to very quickly be able to understand this particular issue and why it affects them or why they should care about it. With that as well, being able to be a concise writer or communicator, again, with that, people have limited time, they might not have as much bandwidth to read lengthy essays or writings, being able to kind of break down those things to what's most important, what are the key takeaways, and being able to convey that very succinctly. And then also having patience with non-technical colleagues. I think this might date myself, but there was a famous quote about someone that was in the Senate describing the internet as a series of tubes. And so perhaps even very simply like that, perhaps needing to come up with creative ways or kind of, not standard sort of ways of trying to convey, that particular piece of information. So next slide, please. And so here's just some examples that have come up recently of where you may see job opportunities, and like we've mentioned, sometimes these also appear on our job board. So first, kind of in the quasi government space, on the in Congress, oftentimes there are specific policy advisors that have a background in technology that work on staff to work with the staffers in a particular senator or congressperson's office to be able to help work in partnership with creation of legislation or oversight letters, inquiries to particular technical entities around policy issues related to technology. Also, advocacy groups like Amnesty International, they have a specific branch dedicated to technology, and obviously to pursue, and as you can see here, with advocacy efforts around big tech, invasive biometric surveillance, algorithmic justice, and so on. So just as a couple examples. And then the next would be developers, and usually these individuals are hired to help maintain or to mature a particular open source project. This can be things like browser extensions, mobile applications, or other standalone pieces of software. And so often these projects that are in our space related to software development usually pertain to being able to maintain security when accessing the open web, so things like VPNs or other circumvention tools, being able to store and or transmit data safely and securely, so mobile safety apps or strong communication apps. So in this case here, many folks may know Signal, that being an example as well. Also, additional skills in this arena. So beyond just, coding, being able to provide documentation, with the types of communities that engage in these tools, because their use context can really vary quite widely. Having appropriate documentation around, what was being done, being able to quickly address bug reports that emerge, that may impact the functionality, the security, or the use of a tool in a particular context is really important as well. And then also, often with these types of projects, there can be many contributors. That are working on those, and so being able to gain familiarity or practice with, product management methodologies, agile, scrum, just to name a few examples. But being able to kind of understand how those operate and how you might be able to fit as a contributor to these larger projects, following those methodologies to, create particular pieces of code, work on particular aspects of a larger project, etc. And so here's some other examples of tools that are in our space. There are many, many technology projects in our space. So this is just a very, very small sampling, but just to highlight. So for example, Secure Drop. This is a tool that's been used by a lot of journalistic entities. I know New York Times, for example, works on this or has an instance of this project. And the goal of it is for anyone who wishes to whistleblow or share information securely with a media outlet so that it can be reported on without, fear of reprisal from the whistleblower, that they can do so safely. And so Secure Drop, works closely with a lot of journalistic entities, is housed within Freedom of the Press Foundation, and they often look for software engineers and developers to contribute to that project. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is, one of the pioneering groups in at the intersection of privacy, technology, and free speech and free expression in the US, also has some of their own technology projects. So one of them is a tool called HTTPS Everywhere. So basically making sure that, people that are visiting, particular websites are able to access the SSL or TLS encrypted one rather than the plain text version. So just as a few examples, but like I said, many, many more, and they really, run the gamut to dealing with a lot of technical issues as well. Next slide, please. And then another is, really being able to work more specifically on networks, with our the digital rights space, really leaning heavily towards communications. Having an understanding of how networks work, how they interoperate, is also a skill that's really highly sought at. And that is a really interesting space that's really maturing as well, where there's the opportunity to, stay in academia and continue to pursue that, but also still be able to liaise with colleagues in other universities or other research institutions, companies, other technologists. We see Roya here. I know that with Jed as well, doing a lot of that work at the nexus of academia and being able to work more directly with groups that are experiencing some of those issues, to give that well-rounded picture of what's happening in the state of being able to access an open internet versus the types of censorship techniques that are happening on a technical level, and how developers and other software projects can respond to that, or maintain research to overcome these types of issues when they arise in advance of pioneering a particular technical development. So that's something that's also really critical in our space. And so, in addition, to obviously that very immense technical understanding, having strong writing skills, both on the academic side, but also even, to a bit, even conveying information to non-technical audiences, ability to work well with other disciplines. It is, being kind of that community of communities. There are different stakeholders that wish to learn more, wish to contribute and collaborate on that. And so being able to maintain that flexibility and openness to working with others is also incredibly important. And so here's some other examples. Some are stay within kind of that academic arena. Some sort of are a bridge between academic and more direct technical development. So, for example, the Tor project. This is a probably one of the more well known open source circumvention tools in our field. Often works to bring on subject matter experts in the networking space to support the Onion services and the Onion network that really are the underpinnings of helping Tor to continue to function and to be stable when being used by individuals worldwide. And then also, Jed mentioned that both Sandy and I previously worked at the Open Technology Fund. They also have a fellowship program called the Information Controls Fellowship Program, and this is a great opportunity for recent graduates, those pursuing postgraduate studies. To also be able to pursue particular projects of interest that are at kind of at the intersection of technology, human rights, research and technology. So that also is available on a annual or semi-annual basis as well. And then just additional advice and considerations, as you all are thinking through kind of next steps, or I have this education, what should I do next? Other things that you may want to think about, when making that decision is, with open source projects, one of the beautiful things about it is it's really open for anyone to work on or contribute to. There are, obviously there's many projects will have, their own GitHub page. That's a great way where, if you see opportunities to kind of, that you could show off your skills or contribute, that's available too. Many projects also have bug bounty initiatives where they'll look for or rely on technical experts to identify security risks, and help make those patches, and then will often pay or give a financial reward to those individuals that make those fixes. So also another great way where beyond just kind of doing the cover letter and resume writing, if there's other things that you kind of want to take on to show off your skills, this is an excellent avenue in which you can do that. And the other is, with a lot of these careers, these career opportunities, it is very likely that you may work with mostly technical individuals, but many of them don't, and it's quite common to interface or interact with non-technical roles within an organization or a community. And so being able to gain some familiarity or practice with other pieces of technology project execution that aren't specific to coding. So I had mentioned earlier, project management methodologies or styles. Data analysis is also very valuable as well. Usability or user experience design, and many others. Having those skills as well, really is, just basically just shows, and helps demonstrate, your ability to really be able to work within, the different pieces of a technology project or a technology oriented program. And then also, like we said, we do have a digital rights job board. Really highly encourage you all to, to check that out. We also offer, and as you can see here, so we also have a Mattermost. If anyone has used Mattermost, if not, it's basically an open source Slack. But we do have a job seeker and job offering channel, and you can always contact Sandy or myself or other team members if you have particular questions. The job offering piece is always available, but even the job seeker piece, we're more than happy to help with any introductions or connect you to to folks that or projects that you may be interested in. We also have a weekly newsletter where we'll often post new jobs or new opportunities that emerge. We also are kicking off an annual job fair. We had a beta a beta version of this earlier this year, which was immensely successful for both hiring organizations and job seekers. And so we're really aiming to do this again very soon. And so sign up for the newsletter. Keep an eye out for when that job fair will be coming up. And like we said, the space is very open. People come from different arenas and different experiences, and generally people are open to chatting and getting to know one another. And so, if there's any project or organization that's of interest, don't hesitate to reach out, and feel free to ask for an informational interview, virtual coffee chat, or otherwise. They'd be happy to talk about that, maybe even share their own experience of how they got into this space. But it's really, really, but people are very open with sharing those things. So definitely don't hesitate to take people up on those opportunities. And just related to the job board, we did notify some organizations in our space that we were going to be speaking with you all today. And two organizations, Least Authority and Great Fire, said that if any of you are interested, they'd be more than happy to speak with you all if you're interested. Specifically, Great Fire is hiring a developer. Great Fire is an organization that specifically works on research and technology development to counteract Chinese censorship. And Least Authority, it's hard to kind of capture. It sort of feels like they do all sorts of things. But Sandy, do you want to describe a bit more about Least Authority?
No, I can't. I am a community manager. You guys can look at the website. I just wanted to know as well, we want to leave time for questions. And, if you don't have questions specifically about the digital rights space, also feel free if you have questions about just starting your career. I mean, I'm kind of the first one to go to college in my family. I know Lindsay has, similar kind of background. We're also two women that work in technology. So if you have, specific questions, even just about, job, career, let us know. But yeah, we would love to hear from you guys. You can chat, type it in the chat, or there's no way for people to voice. So yeah, type it in the chat if you have any questions. Yes, the slides are available to look at later. We will send them to your professors, and they can. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I can definitely share the slides. I see folks typing, so. And also, I guess while folks are typing questions, I'm just going to mention, I mean, we geared this towards you folks because of what you're studying right now, but really, this is a space that requires all disciplines. Like, even myself, like, I entered open source, like, I actually, like, now I know about technology because I've been in this field for so long. But I mean, my skill set is community management, communications. So there are different types of disciplines that fit very, very well within this particular space. I think the commonality we all have is just that we want a better world, and we're really passionate about fighting, really what's considered, I mean, I hate using buzzwords, but they're really next generational issues that everyone across the globe is fighting. So somebody asked, where is the newsletter sign up? I can post it right now in the chat.
Yeah, so one question I had was whenever I try to recruit students into cybersecurity kinds of research and stuff, half of them say, but I'm interested in machine learning. So I'm just wondering if you could talk for people interested in kind of machine learning and AI, big data, and those kinds of things. What kinds of opportunities would there be for them in this community?
Lindsay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I was going to say, I think in the the machine learning and artificial intelligence space, a lot of those, because especially that's such an emerging space, and I would say I think just as as a precursor comment is that a lot of technology changes really fast. It's hard to to gain in-depth study, and become an expert in something that's so new very quickly. And with a space like ours, there's really a lot of opportunity to kind of come into a new discipline. And I think with certainly with something like machine learning, being able to kind of understand pieces around the data analysis component, how that works. On the artificial intelligence side of things, there has been a lot more study around algorithmic design. How exactly is an algorithm created? What are the pieces of data that come into it? I think a common theme that's come up around kind of algorithmic oversight has been the transparency pieces around what elements of data are being used to generate an algorithm to then jump to particular conclusions. An example that's come up in the US a lot has been around predictive policing tactics, where pieces of data that are biased towards drawing particular conclusions around people's backgrounds or where they live in a particular part of a city, that therefore they're more likely to commit crime. And upon further examination, that those elements of data that are being fed into this algorithm themselves are flawed or are inaccurate or have bias, and therefore require more oversight or more transparency. And so I think even besides even just the actual more of like those technical elements as well of what's being done to kind of generate the algorithm, how is it taking those pieces of data, but even kind of breaking those a bit apart around looking at what are these various data sets, where are they coming from, how is that information being collected, and kind of that more research oriented piece around where is this coming from, who's using it, asking kind of more of those investigative questions, have been kind of particular trends that we've seen in more of the artificial intelligence algorithm machine learning piece in this space. And again, that's something that's really coming up a lot. There are more opportunities in that, job opportunities specifically in that particular arena, but more kind of focused around transparency, working with particular institutions that rely, or tech companies. Like there's a group called Partnership on AI that will often work kind of at the intersection of, larger technology companies, as well as with researchers and experts on, trying to achieve greater transparency and oversight into how particular algorithms are used to inform, inform pieces of government, how they're impacting, frankly, public spaces at this point, but how those are influencing things like social media during critical times in a given country, such as during election periods, or other spaces where dialogue and need for information can be more highly sought after or more contentious. And so bringing those issues to light to help users of those particular spaces to be more aware of, why they're seeing particular pieces of information versus, not seeing others, why that's the case, if there's more reform or oversight needed, being able to kind of speak to that more concretely based on research and technical analysis as well.
So GS44 has a question I'm going to try and attempt to answer, which is, how much entry-level opportunity is there to get involved here, fresh grad without prior industry experience? We are your field, and I'll explain to you why, right? So the first thing, I'm in my late 40s, and the one thing I love about this community is that it's quite radical, right? Culturally, it's quite radical. It's very collaborative. It definitely incorporates a lot of the open source kind of flat structure in a lot of places. And that means that people are judged not necessarily by their degrees or kind of, I don't know, other things that matter in other industries. It's really about what you do, right? A lot of like, I would say even some technologists in the space that are leading very important work are even self-taught, right? I mean, needless to say, a lot of these folks started, they're now a little bit older, but there is an openness and there is a willingness to really look at folks that are just entering because it's an emerging field, because there is no handbook on how to do things, right? A lot of us, even the work that I do in community management, um, very few community managers have the experience of dealing with such a thoroughly international community, right? So when I entered this field, I had no experience whatsoever, and people really embraced me. Also, as Lindsay alluded to before, there's such a demand right now for technological skills that I think, especially folks that are coming from a technological background, will really not have much of a problem if they're interested in digital rights, finding an organization that really would invest in them, help them grow, kind of teach them the ropes, because it's not just our field that are looking for folks with technological backgrounds. It's really the entire world, right? Like every industry is looking for good technologists. It's just that we're cooler and we're doing work that matters. And so I think that if you want help, GS44 or anybody in this class, that's really, as community managers, we really do provide human support, meaning we don't just say it and then disappear. Like really, 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 we are really invested in having really good people in this space. So just reach out and we can definitely schedule coffee or introduce you to some of these organizations that have already indicated that they are really interested in meeting you folks. Lindsay, I don't know if you want to share anything else about that.
No, I agree. And I think also too, as you're kind of starting out in this field, really the opportunities are yours, because these type, your knowledge and the insights that you have in this, in a technical, with a more technical disciplines that you've studied, really the opportunities are yours to kind of see what is of interest, what are kind of projects that you're interested in. And as Sandy said, a lot of folks started in this space and in different arenas, and the opportunities to grow into a lot of other, gain other skills, start different types of projects, that level of flexibility. And also, even with Jed bringing up AI and machine learning, there are a lot of kind of cutting edge projects that more frontline organizations that we tend to work with are really tackling first. And so if there's something that you're seeing, hey, I read this in Wired or saw it on Vice or whatever else, that there are organizations that, because they're dealing with such nascent issues that are really starting to get more attention, those are great opportunities for someone like yourselves who are trying to gain more experience, but bring a level of technical knowledge that opportunity is available to be able to work with the organization. They benefit having your technical knowledge. You're able to kind of gain more skills and gain expertise at really cutting edge or emerging issues and topics as well.
And I want to mention something that Lindsay mentioned. Even if your desire is in the future to go to industry, the one thing that I think is really important to know is that activists and journalists, especially in this current environment that we're in really every region, they serve as canary in the coal mine, right? So many times they are experiencing security, privacy risks that then things are tested on them before they're kind of like implemented in a broader way. And so if you are someone that really likes puzzles and really likes to solve things, right, this is really a good space for that. I would say that most people in this community, whether they are you know whatever technologists or non-technologists, we're all system thinkers, and we really like to look at systems and figure out how to improve them. And on the technological part, that also means, looking at these new risks that are popping up, because they're being used against, literally like the most vulnerable groups in the world, right? And then that's another thing as well, because it's so diverse. And I say this, my family is Latin American, and I grew up here in New York City, because so many of our folks come from these marginalized communities, right? The culture is really, because we all know what it likes to feel othered and also not welcomed or accepted in a particular space. The community really works and has been working hard for years to really create an environment where everybody feels welcomed and free to ask questions and not feel like you have to know it all, basically. And in fact, I would say of all communities, this is a community where what's the belief, the only thing I know is nothing, right? The only thing I know is that I know nothing. This is a community that really embraces that, because asking questions, particularly when you're tackling a challenge that has never been tackled before, is really, really important.
So I had another question, which was so half the students will claim that machine learning is what they're interested in, and then the other half will claim like red teaming, cybersecurity kinds of things, and looking at and so I'm sure, I mean, we've seen a lot of examples in the slides of where that would be useful, but maybe specifically for people that like CTF competitions and that kind of work, are there specific jobs within this field that they should specifically look at?
Yeah, so I think particularly on kind of the red teaming piece, certainly, and Jed, I saw that you had mentioned DEF CON. There are other types of conferences. I think even at a previous IFF, there was a capture the flag type competition that was done. But yeah, there are definitely different spaces and communities that run those types of challenges. I think particularly on the red teaming side, that is also a space that really comes up a lot. Sandy had mentioned at the beginning that digital security experts, and that being can be a pretty broad term of helping organizations better understand how they need to use particular tools and technologies to help secure their work, their team members, etc. And particularly the red teaming piece is something that's very that is a really helpful component of that, of being able to work with a trusted individual or organization that has that technical knowledge to essentially with that kind of having that trust to be able to work with them to say like, hey, look, we had this incident, or we're concerned about this particular escalation in tactics by a repressive entity against our work, and we want to make sure that all of our practices are as secure as possible. So media organizations may do this when it comes to how exactly their journalists are engaging with particular groups, even diaspora organizations. I think many of you have seen the news, like a lot of groups that are working in the Iranian diaspora, the Russian diaspora, Russian and Ukrainian diaspora, that those that are working kind of towards more pro free expression, pro human rights related issues, oftentimes, are looking for, are in a position where they're looking for individuals that are interested in helping them, may have an understanding of things that they might be encountering because of the nature of their work. Like Jed had mentioned, certainly anyone that comes from a community that has undergone these types of issues, speaks a second language, or is familiar with a particular context, like if you've done a study abroad program or other type of international engagement. Those are the things that that are really helpful for those groups to better prepare their own practices, be able to work and kind of do, as red teaming does, do that kind of like safety exercise of being able to have threats or vulnerabilities within kind of their current setup pointed out by someone that they trust versus someone that is an attacker and seeks to do harm. So definitely a lot of opportunities there, and they can be very flexible as well. It can sometimes be smaller term kind of consulting type engagements, which may be of interest if you're just looking for something less permanent, in between, summer breaks or things like that. Or, if you're looking for something longer, that there are organizations and, a nonprofit or social good organizations that do this as a service for other, for other nonprofits as well. So definitely that's a really big area there as well.
I put radically open security, but there was another group that I always forget their name. Do you remember the other?
Yeah,
It's okay.
and I think also too, it's forgive us, it's a bit late on our side of things,
Exactly.
but definitely there's there are a lot of groups that do work on these things, or even some I think one, for example, is NCC Group. They are an industry organization, but have had a history of working with with nonprofit organizations to to help with auditing of tools, or auditing of practices and protocols within their organizations as well.
Right.
Okay, let's in the IRC chat. Let's thank Sandy and Lindsay for coming, and then I also want to thank our TA Sandia. This has been a problem that we have been trying to solve for a long time because we've been talking to various funding agencies about doing basically CTF competitions for organizations like TibCert that have people, there'd be people in Tibet and everything, and some of them can join as they like in Jitsu, and however, but people have restrictions, like they don't want to be associated with this field, or they could be arrested and that kind of thing. So having this like Jitsi, but then YouTube live on the back end, I'm really happy that this is working, and this is something we might be using. Sandy, you did a really great job of it, so thank you. But yeah, and thank you, Sandy and Lindsay. Like it's a real privilege to have you guys, and we'll be in touch. So
thank you all. We want you, reach out to us.
Yes, thank you all so much. We really appreciate the time.
Come to this side. We're cooler. We have better parties. Bye.
okay, bye.